The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the debriefing hall, that sterile, airtight room where truth was weighed heavier than oxygen. Rows of uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder, boots aligned in perfect symmetry, yet no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of machines and the echo of authority. That hung in the air like static dot at exactly 09:00. The doors opened. A woman entered. She didn't march. She glided, silent as fog, her boots landing with the precision of a heartbeat. Her uniform was regulation Black Ops gray, stripped of insignia except for a faded captain's patch that looked stitched on long before the war had ended. Her face was calm, her hair cropped short, her eyes sharp enough to slice through the room's tension. No one recognized her, yet everyone felt her an aura that made even the veterans straighten unconsciously. At the far end, General Roth sat behind a cold steel table, a thick folder in front of him, its label red in crimson, classified level black. He didn't look up when he spoke. "State your name for the record." The woman clasped her hands behind her back. Her tone was steady, trained, almost detached. "Captain Lira Vale, sir." The general flipped a page, pretending to check something he already knew wasn't there. "Your file doesn't exist. Captain, perhaps you'd like to explain how you walked into a restricted command center with a non-existent record." Her eyes didn't flicker. "Because you invited me, sir." A ripple of quiet confusion passed through the rows of officers. The general's gaze rose slowly, finally meeting hers. There was something in her stare, not defiance, not pride, something colder, familiar, even haunting. He leaned forward. "Your call sign, Captain." The air thickened. Every officer turned slightly toward her, as if the sound of those two words carried a weight none wanted to hold. For 3 full seconds, she said nothing. Then she exhaled a whisper that sliced through the silence. "Specter 6. A shudder ran through the room. Someone in the back whispered, "That's impossible." Another muttered, "Specter 6 was killed in Red Hollow." The general's pen froze mid-air. He stared at her, searching for the trick, the lie, the imposter. But the eyes staring back at him were the same ones that used to look through a sniper scope 3 years ago. Cold, steady, and burning with memory. "We buried Specter 6, he said quietly. "With her team." Lira's jaw tightened just slightly. "You buried someone, sir, but it wasn't me." The whisper echoed through the room, hollow and electric, like a ghost stepping back into the world that had forgotten. Her dot, no one moved. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking, and for the first time in years, General Roth, the man who never feared anything, felt his pulse quicken, because if Specter 6 was standing here alive, then the war, he thought was over, had just come back from the dead. No one dared to breathe. The air in the chamber felt colder now, as if the word Specter had drawn a shadow across the lights. General Roth finally broke the silence. His voice was low, controlled, yet every syllable carried disbelief. "Captain Hayes, you were declared KIA killed in action. Operation Deep Vale, Red Hollow Valley. I saw the footage myself. No survivors." Lira Vale didn't flinch. Her expression remained carved from the same stone she'd built around her soul. "Then what you saw was what they wanted you to see." The general's hand stilled above the folder. Around him, officers exchanged uneasy glances. The hum of the overhead fan suddenly sounded like the rotors of a distant helicopter. "Explain," Roth ordered. She took a slow step forward, the heels of her boots echoing through the chamber like distant gunfire. "Red Hollow wasn't an ambush, sir. It was an erasure. We were sent in to stop a bioweapon transport, but our intel was fed to the enemy. They knew our every move." Her eyes drifted toward the ceiling, but she wasn't seeing it. She was back there, dust, smoke, and screams painted across her memory. "They hit us before we even unpacked our gear. Specter 1 went down with the drone operator in the first minute. Specter 4 bled out beside me before sunrise. I buried him with my own hands." A tremor brushed through her voice, almost invisible, but the general caught it. "So how did you survive?" Lira's answer came slowly, the words heavy as confession. "Because I stopped running. I went to ground, tracked the convoy myself. For 6 days I followed them, no food, no comms, no backup. When I caught them, I triggered their own chemical payload and burned every trace of the weapon." Her eyes snapped back to him. "When I came out of the valley, there was nothing left to report. Headquarters had already sealed the file and buried our names." Roth leaned back, absorbing each syllable like a blow. His gaze shifted to the officers, then back to her. "You're telling me you stayed off-grid for 3 years? No contact, no extraction?" "Yes, sir." "Why come back now?" Lira hesitated. For the first time, her armor cracked just enough for something human to slip through grief, maybe, or exhaustion, because someone's using the Ghosts of Specter unit again. The general's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" She placed a small, weathered drive on the steel table. Its casing was scorched, its edges warped. "This was buried under the ruins of Red Hollow. I retrieved it before leaving the valley. Last month I intercepted the same encryption pattern in a mercenary transmission. Someone has resurrected our mission and our data." A long pause. Then Roth closed the folder slowly, eyes locked on hers. Then, "Captain Hayes, I think the dead just re-enlisted." The drive lay on the table like a fragment of a nightmare. its black surface reflecting the sterile light above. General Roth didn't speak. He didn't have tooth. The silence begged for answers. Lyra Hayes stood still, her hands clasped behind her back, her gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the concrete walls. Red Hollow wasn't a battle, she began quietly. It was a grave being dug in real time. The air around her thickened as her voice slipped into the past. It had been dusk when Specter unit dropped into the valley. Soldiers wearing the same badge but carrying different ghosts. Specter 1, Major Ronan Shotha, leader, the strategist. Her mentor, Specter 2, Vega, communications always cracking jokes to keep them sane. Specter 3, Mason, demolitions, a mountain of a man who hummed country songs during firefights. Specter 4, Lena Medic, the heart of the unit. Specter 5, Colt Recon sharp eyes, quick trigger, and then her Specter 6, Sniper, Overwatch, the one who watched everyone die. She could still smell the metallic dust. When the memory unfolded, the descent had been clean. Intel said minimal resistance, but as they advanced through the gorge, every instinct in her body screamed wrong. Birds had gone silent. The wind had stopped moving. Ronan gave the hand signal halt. A second later, the first round tore through Vega's shoulder, then everything became fire. They came from both ridges. Lyra whispered, eyes unfocused. Hundreds. They'd mapped our drop zone, jammed coms, triangulated our heat signatures before we even touched ground. Her breath caught as another picture resurfaced. A blast wave. The shrapnel, Lena screaming into a broken radio. She had dragged Lena behind a half-collapsed drone shell, pressing a bandage she knew was useless. She looked at me and said, "Don't let them take our data." Those were her last words. The officers around the table looked away. Even soldiers have limits to the pain they can witness. When dawn came, she continued, I counted 5 bodies. My rifle was the only thing still working. I torched the files, destroyed the uplink, and sent a final burst code to HQ. Roth frowned. We never received it. I know, she said flatly. It never left the valley. The jammers saw to that. Someone wanted Specter unit gone, sir. We weren't wiped out by the enemy, we were erased by design. Roth's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. The implication hung like smoke, and you stayed there. Alone? I had 2. I buried them. I marked their graves with their tags. I waited for extraction that never came. On the 7th night, when the storm hit, I walked out of Red Hollow with nothing but their dog tags and the drive you're holding. She finally looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't Specter 6 anymore, after that. Sir, I was just the ghost that forgot how to die. General Roth's office lights dimmed as the projector flickered to life. Lines of satellite imagery crawled across the screen. Heat signatures, encrypted pings moving through a desert border no one admitted existed. Lyra stood motionless, hands clasped behind her back. Every image felt like déjà vu. Roth pointed to a cluster of vehicles near the bottom of the feed. This was taken 48 hours ago, near the Iraq corridor. You see that symbol on the lead truck. The frame froze, a black serpent coiled around a red blade. Lyra's jaw clenched. Black Serpent Militia. Roth nodded grimly. They were wiped outdoor, so we believed. But intelligence suggests someone rearmed them, and they're moving under a new handler. He tapped the console. A distorted audio clip filled the room. Voices, static, a faint echo of digital code. Recognize the cipher? He asked. Lyra's pulse slowed. She didn't need to listen twice. That's Specter unit encryption. Variant for exactly, Roth said. That pattern came from the drive you recovered at Red Hollow. Whoever's behind this, they have our file Specter protocols, mission logs, tactical signatures. They're using your dead team's data to build a ghost unit of their own. Lyra felt the air thin. The idea of her squad's worker friends' deaths being recycled for mercenary profit twisted her stomach. Sir, permission to deploy, she said, voice tightening. I'll find them myself. Roth's eyes narrowed. Not this time, Captain. You disappeared for 3 years. I won't authorize another one-woman crusade. With respect, sir, she countered. No one knows that data like I do. They'll anticipate our standard units. You send anyone else, you'll lose them all. The general studied her. There was no arrogance in her tone, only cold certainty. Finally, he exhaled. We're assembling a new team call sign, Shadow Unit. Younger, faster, but green. You'll lead them. Lyra frowned. You're putting recruits on a Specter-class op. I'm putting you on it, Roth replied. They'll follow your lead door, they won't come back. He slid a small case across the table. Inside lay a fresh forged ID patch. Specter 6. Reissued. She stared at it, the letters cutting deep into her chest like an old scar reopened. You want the ghost back? I need her, Roth said quietly, because the war we thought we buried just started breathing again. Lyra closed the case. Then I'll make sure it stops breathing, sir. As she turned to leave, Roth's voice followed her through the open door. One last thing, Captain. Whatever you find out there, don't let the past control you. She paused in the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming above her, the faint echo of her team's laughter flickering in her memory. The past isn't controlling me, sir, she murmured. It's guiding my aim. And with that, Specter 6 returned to the shadows she once escaped. The hangar smelled of oil and old ghosts. Rows of drones slept beneath tarps, and crates stamped property of command lined the walls like tombstones. Lira. Hey, Specter 6 walked through the echoing space, her boots the only sound. At the far end, 5 soldiers waited in formation. They were young, too young. None bore the weight in their eyes that comes only after losing everything. General Roth's voice carried through the speaker above them. Shadow Unit, meet your commanding officer. They turned as Lira stepped into the light. Conversations died mid-breath. Someone whispered, "That's the ghost." Her gaze moved from face to face. Rin Marlowe, Manek 22, nervous smile but steady hands. Torres, heavy weapons, shoulders like concrete walls. Juno, tech specialist, already scanning her gear with a tablet. Kerr, scout, restless eyes that never stayed still. And Raffi, expression unreadable. Lira said nothing at first. She let the silence stretch until it pressed against them. "You've read the files," she finally said. "Forget them. Files tell you what someone did, not who they were. Out there, it's who you are when everything breaks that counts." Rin shifted, unsure. "Ma'am, with respect, why us?" Lira's eyes softened just slightly. "Because the dead don't fight wars anymore." That silenced him. Training day 1 began before sunrise. Lira moved through the course like a shadow, shooting, correcting form with a surgeon's precision. When Torres missed a shot, she didn't bark. She adjusted his stance, whispered, breathed through the recoil, not against it. When Rin's hands trembled while applying a field tourniquet, Lira knelt beside her. Pressure saves lives, not panic. By the 3rd day, the recruits had stopped calling her ma'am and started calling her Specter. Rin approached her during a water break. Curiosity outweighing fear. "They say you vanished for 3 years. Is it true?" Lira didn't look at her. "True enough. Where were you?" "Learning what happens when the mission ends, but you don't." Rin didn't ask again. Late that night, Lira stood alone by the shooting range. Her rifle lay across the table, disassembled, cleaned until the metal shone. Above her, floodlights hummed, casting long shadows that swayed like ghosts. She reached into her pocket and pulled out 6 dog tags, their edges worn smooth. She ran her thumb across one named Lena R and whispered, "They're calling me back in." "Lena, guess the world's still not done with us." A faint wind moved through the hangar. Lifting a scrap of paper across the floor, it stopped at her boot. Written in faded ink were 3 words. "Don't forget them." Lira bent down, picked it up, and tucked it into her jacket. "I never do," she said quietly, and when the morning bell sounded, Specter 6 and her new shadows were ready to step into the darkness once more. 2 weeks later, night swallowed the desert. The convoy was already moving 3 armored trucks, 2 escort bikes, and a communication van in the rear. Heat signatures glowed faint red across the satellite feed. Somewhere inside those trucks was the stolen Specter. Unit dated the ghost code that could rebuild her. Fallen Team's mission system into a weapon. Operation Eclipse had begun. Lira crouched on a ridge, the wind scraping dust against her mask. Her voice came through the cum line, low and even. "Specter 6 to command. Eyes on convoy. Shadow Unit in position. Awaiting green." General Roth's reply crackled through static. "Green light. 10 minutes to intercept. Bring them home, Captain." She nodded once, then turned to her team, below. Torres was checking his launcher. Rin was whispering a silent prayer, her hands trembling slightly around her medkit. "Stay low, stay invisible," Lira ordered. "We move like ghosts seen only by those about to die." They advanced through the dark 5 shadows gliding between rock and dust. Every motion precise, every breath measured. Lira reached the perimeter first. Through her thermal scope, she saw the guards 2 on each truck, bored alert, unaware that death was already sighting them. Targets marked. On my shot, the suppressed round left her rifle like a whisper. One guard fell soundlessly. The other collapsed before he could blink. Torres and Kerr moved in to neutralize the rest. Rin followed close behind, scanning for wounded. "Clear," Torres muttered. Lira approached the lead truck, prying open the rear hatch. Insiders of sealed data drives, each glowing with faint green security lights. She scanned the markings, then froze. Every drive bore the same stamp. Specter Program, Red Hollow Division. Her stomach turned cold. "Command. This isn't stolen data, it's replication tech. Someone's been cloning our mission profiles, recreating Specter Unit's AI. Roth's voice came through. Tense. "Destroy it. 6. Now." She nodded to Raffi. He planted the C4. Timer set, 2 minutes. But as they turned to leave, a sound cut through the night metal grinding, engines roaring to life. The desert lit up with floodlights. "Ambush." Kerr shouted. Gunfire erupted. Bullets tore into the sand around them. The sky exploded with tracer fire. Lira rolled behind a dune, shouting into her cum. "All units, fall back. It's a trap." A massive explosion slammed into the ground near Rin. She screamed. Thrown into the dust, Lira crawled toward her through smoke and sand. "Rin, stay with me." The medic's face was pale, blood pooling beneath her armor. "Captain." she gasped. They knew we were coming. Lira's pulse spiked. Through the smoke, she saw a dark figure step from the convoy wreckage, wearing a stolen U.S. patch and a helmet marked Specter-1. Her breath caught. Ronan. The figure lifted its weapon toward her. Ghosts of her fallen commander had come back from the dead. The night cracked open with the roar of gunfire. Lira's hands trembled around her rifle as the figure approached through smoke, his silhouette unmistakable, his voice a haunting echo from the past. You should have stayed buried with the rest of us. 6. The voice modulator distorted his tone, but she knew that cadence, that calm authority that once led them through chaos. Commander Ronan Vale. Her mentor, her commander, the man she had watched die in the burning ruins of Red Hollow. You're not him, she whispered. No one survived that blast. Ronan stepped closer, lowering his rifle slightly. You think you understand what happened? They left us, Lira. They left me. I woke up in their lab, rebuilt, repurposed. I am the Specter Program now. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Behind her, Torres and Kerr exchanged glances, realizing the horror of his words. Ronan wasn't resurrected. He was engineered. They made you into a weapon, she said softly. No, he replied. They made me into the truth. He raised his weapon again. Lira dived sideways, firing 3 rounds in quick succession. Sparks erupted off the armored exosuit on his chest. He didn't even flinch. Torres screamed into the cum. We need to fall back. Negative, Lira barked. We finished this here. She sprinted toward the nearest dune, sliding into cover. The heat sensors flickered on her HUD, multiple hostiles closing in fast. Drones, likely controlled by Ronan's suit. The trap was deeper than she thought. Rin was still on the ground, barely breathing. Lira crawled to her side, pressing a hand to her wound. Stay with me, medic. We're not losing you. Rin coughed, blood staining her lips. Captain, he's not your ghost anymore. He's their machine. Her voice faded as her eyes closed. Something inside Lira broke. The woman who had once led soldiers with reason and restraint now felt the old fire return, the fury that the army once called reckless. She turned toward Torres and Kerr. Get Rin out. That's an order. What about you? Kerr yelled over the gunfire. I'm the distraction. She loaded a new mag, pulled her hood tight, and whispered the words that once defined her legend. Specter 6 engaging. She charged straight into the line of drones. Her rifle spat flames. Every shot precise, merciless. Explosions tore the night apart as her grenades hit the convoy. Torres looked back once, just long enough, to see her silhouette framed against the inferno. Ronan's voice echoed again, almost admiring, still fearless, even after death. Lira stopped, smoke curling around her like shadowed wings. Not fearless, she said, her tone calm, deadly. Just done running from ghosts. She lifted the detonator in her hand, the one linked to the remaining C4 under the last truck. Goodbye, Commander. The desert exploded in light. The explosion rippled through the desert like a second sunrise. Flames devoured the convoy. Shrapnel rained across the dunes, and for a moment, everything went silent. Command's comms erupted with static. Specter 6, respond. Specter 6, do you copy? Nothing. Inside the command tent, General Roth's face turned pale. Around him, the ops team stared at the satellite feed in orange bloom of fire spreading wider and wider until the screen turned white. We lost her signal, one analyst whispered. No, Roth muttered. She doesn't die that easily. Hours later, the flames had burned themselves into embers. A single drone swept over the wreckage, transmitting hazy footage back to base. Scattered metal, ruined data core, and one figure crawling from the ash. Her armor was scorched black, her visor cracked, but her eyes still burned with the same steady fire. Specter 6 was alive. Lira stumbled through the smoke, coughing, half blind. The world tilted around her, every sound muffled except the low hum of her heartbeat. Somewhere in the wreckage, Ronan's voice came through a damaged cum piece. You can't destroy what they built. You just bear the truth. Again, then silence. She limped toward the horizon, clutching her side, blood dripping from a deep shrapnel wound. Her HUD blinked warnings: low oxygen, armor breach, internal damage, but she kept walking. You're wrong, she whispered into the wind. You were the truth once, Ronan. Now you're just another ghost. As dawn broke, a rescue drone found her collapsed against a dune, unconscious but breathing. It hovered for a moment before sending a beacon signal, base camp for 8. Hours later, the medbay was silent except for the rhythmic beep of machines. Lira's eyes flickered open. A faint light cut through the bandages over her temple. She turned her head slowly and saw General Roth sitting beside her bed, silent, head bowed. When he noticed she was awake, his voice softened. You should be dead, Specter. You trained me better than that, sir. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. We recovered fragments of the data drives. Whatever they were building, it's not over. Then finish it, she said. Burn the rest of the program. He nodded, but something in his eyes told her the order wouldn't hold. Too many generals. Too many secrets. Before leaving, Roth paused by her bed. They called you a ghost, once, he said quietly. Now you've lived up to it. Ghosts don't die, Lira replied. They haunt what they can't forgive. As he left, she stared at her reflection in the glass. Her scars, her eyes, the faint reflection of Ronan's helmet burning behind her eyelids. She didn't know whether she had survived, or just become another version of what she swore to destroy. The Spectre lived, but at what cost? Days turned into weeks. Lyra's wounds began to heal, but the nightmares didn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flash, the flames, and Ronan's face inside the fire. The medbay lights never dimmed enough for her to forget. One night, when the hallways were empty and the guards had changed shift, she slipped out of her room, barefoot, quiet, a ghost again. Down in the lower decks of the command facility, she found what she was looking for: Archive Room 7, restricted to top-level clearance. She still remembered the code. Authorization, Specter 6. She whispered into the scanner. The door hissed open. Inside were dozens of servers, each humming faintly, rows of metal walls, blinking lights, and names engraved on black plaques: Specter 1 through 8. Each one marked decommissioned. But next to them, new plaques, freshly engraved. Specter 9, Specter 10, Specter 11. Her blood ran cold. They weren't stopping the program. They were expanding it. Footsteps echoed behind her. You shouldn't be here, Captain. It was General Roth, only this time, his tone wasn't the voice of a commander, it was the voice of a man who had already chosen a side. You knew, she said. I had too, he replied quietly. The world needs the Specter program. Ronan proved it could work. He was tortured. Roth, they stripped his mind, rebuilt him like a machine. He didn't flinch, and yet he survived every test. You call that torture? I call that evolution. Lira stepped closer, fury trembling in her voice. You turned my family into weapons. No, he said softly, you turned yourself into one long before we did. The truth cut deeper than any blade. Because he was right in some way. She had become the very thing she feared, a ghost shaped by war, by orders, by vengeance. She looked at the data drive in her hand, the last remnant of Ronan's AI core she had recovered from the wreck. She could hand it over, or she could end it. I'm not your weapon, she whispered. Then what are you? Roth asked. Lira stared at him, then turned toward the central console. She inserted the drive, opened the root file, and began the purge protocol. The alarms blared instantly. Lira, don't. Goodbye, General. She smashed the emergency release and fired into the servers. Sparks erupted, fire spreading through the room. Roth tried to reach her, but the flames blocked his path. As the system burned, Lyra's voice echoed through the intercom. Spectre unit is gone. Let the world forget our ghosts. Then she disappeared into the smoke. By the time the fire crews arrived, she was gone. No body, no signal, just a cracked dog tag left on the floor, marked :Specter-6.6. Months later, the war had ended, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the sound of bombs. Inside a forgotten base in the northern desert, technicians sealed the last Spectre terminal, its circuits cold, its files erased. Officially, the Specter program never existed. Unofficially, it still haunted the people who built it. A remote listening post, 3:17 hours. A young comms officer sat half asleep at his desk. The room was dim, humming softly with the sound of encrypted transmissions from all over the world. Suddenly, one channel flickered to life, an old military frequency no one had used in years. ZZZ. This is Specter 6. The officer sat upright, heart pounding. Say again. Identify yourself. The static, then a pause. Mission complete. Ghosts laid to rest. The line went dead. He stared at the monitor, frozen. The system showed no active signal, no coordinates, no trace, nothing. Only one log line remained on screen. Call sign, Specter-6, status, unknown. He hesitated, then picked up the internal phone. Sir, we just received a transmission. From who? You're not going to believe this. Meanwhile, deep in the desert, a lone figure walked across the dunes at dawn, the wind carrying whispers of the past. Her armor was gone. Only a weathered cloak and a small rifle remained slung over her shoulder. Lira. Specter 6 Vale stopped at the crest of a hill, looking out at the horizon, endless, gold, and quiet. For the first time in years, she felt peace. She knelt in the sand, pulling something from her pocket, Ronan's broken dog tag. She placed it gently into the earth. You led me once, she whispered. Now I'll lead myself. The wind caught her words, scattering them like ashes. In the silence that followed, she smiled faintly, not because she had won, but because she had finally let go. She turned toward the rising sun and began to walk. No destination, no mission, just a soldier learning how to live again. They called her a ghost, but ghosts don't die, they simply fade, until the world needs them again.